Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, Savage in Business, the podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Cammidge, the Savage in Business, the bearded one, the Viking, the warrior, all that other great stuff that's going on in the future. Man, we are popping in, bringing these episodes to you because Savage in Business, the podcast, is really about the lessons, the cool people, the friends that I've accumulated over the years in business, the people that I do business with, some fantastic people that are out there that have stories to tell you, titillate you, and of course, educate you on the stuff. Now, this isn't one of those morose podcast shows where once you feel terrible about yourself, we're going to beat people up. That ain't working in this one. We're talking straight up about being savage in business. Guests we bring on all about where they're at, life lessons they've learned, the stuff they've learned about business, things that they could pass on to you, and what they're driving for next. Success breeds success. Listening to the guests we bring on here is going to make you into an absolute savage business. Today, I got my brother from another mother, Jackson Fisk, rocking it, joining us on here. Him of Goal Zero fame. That company, if you don't know what it is, keep an eye out for it because it's going to blow up here right away. I don't mean in a bad way, in a fantastic way. And he's an absolute savage. It's been my privilege to know him now for several years, to be able to watch what he's doing inside of business. And I knew that I had to bring him on and start yakking about it. Jax, good to see you, brother.
You too, Mitch. Thanks for having me, brother. It's awesome. That intro is amazing. So nailed it. And thank you for having me as a guest in Savage in Business.
Love it, my brother. All right, we're going to dive right in. Of course, format for the show, 3 segments, talk about past, talk about challenges, talk about future. We're going to start diving in right on the past question as well. I got cool and fun questions. I got all sorts of stuff. But at the end of the day, you got started somewhere. Something was a driver, an impetus, something that wanted to drag you in to this lifestyle as well. How'd you get started, man? The past begets the present and the future. Something told you that you had to be doing this for you and not doing it at the behest of other people.
Yeah, so I made myself unemployable. We'll say that. And for better or worse there. How far back do you want to go? Start of Goal Zero, the path that got me to Goal Zero.
Let's start the path that got you to Goal Zero, man. There's something interesting there.
Yeah, okay. So I never thought I'd do safety. Anyone who's listening to that, I was the guy who would take his tool belt off when the safety guy came around, like everyone else did, because that was culture. But to back that up, I wanted to help people. And there was this thing, and I'll say as a teenager, there's probably a book coming out in the future about a life. So I won't go into too much detail. We don't have time in that. But my upbringing was good, but different. Mm-hmm. So I had an overcorrection where I wanted to help people. I went out and I'm like, I'm going to be a cop. And they're like, no, you're not. That's simple as that. I'm not allowed to be in policing due to some family history. So I was like, all right, I'll join the Army. They'll take anyone. So I had a career.
They will.
Yeah, weird. And then the career path's funny. It's like, oh, I want to be a pilot. They're like, no. I'm like, I want to be a firefighter or medic. They go, no. Join combat arms and you'll work your way into that. And you go, sure you will. Did that. It was great. Learned a lot. Went at a very young age. So, it was a foundational aspect of my life. And then from that overcorrection, you're still young and you go out and put yourself into some weird situations. And, good, bad, and ugly for whatever that is. I ended up getting myself into oil and gas and a trade.
Yeah.
And because that's where the money is in Alberta, right? That's where everyone goes, go make money, go out to the patch. And I progressed really quickly into my trade. And stubbornness, work ethic, whatever it is, it's like, hey, I want to get paid money. I want to make money. I want to do better. So I always went and pushed myself there. Had some great mentors, had some great friends. So I progressed into management really quickly, where I was doing coordinating at like 26. And people were like, wow, right? Helped that I looked way older because I was still bald. But, everyone just kept giving me more money and more responsibility, which was great. And that's what I strived for. Okay. But they only teach you what they know. Right. So I want to put this out there. There was no one that ever led me down the wrong path into management. They're all great people, but you only know what you know. So I also had this underhanded aspect where I wanted to educate myself in safety to get rid of safety people. And because I would walk into an office and go like, what do you do? Right? Like, why are you all in here? There's 1,500 people out on the project. Go do work.
Yeah.
Right. So I started educating myself in it. You start realizing liability. And it's one thing that they don't teach. Right. We're starting to get better at it now, but as a business owner, as a manager, as a supervisor, you are legally responsible for those people. And no one tells you that. Right. So that was the kind of starting point. And again, I never thought I'd do safety. I actually just started taking it to make myself a better supervisor and then maybe get rid of some safety people and see if I could do things a little differently. But I was always the guy that would like fight and question things. Right.
Okay.
So there's a couple jobs that we got put into that I go, look, this isn't right. And no one's saying anything. So I would be that guy. Right. I'd be like, yeah, no, we're not doing it. And, kind of pick those fights. And it wasn't to pick fights. I just believed that we could do something differently or we weren't given all the information. So I ended up there. We were at a job up in the oil field and there was a fatality. There was an industrial incident and there was a fatality 40 feet away from us. And it was showing a crew where to do some work. And it wasn't the crew that was doing the other work that got hurt. Wasn't my job. It wasn't the job I was overseeing, but it could have been easily prevented. And some pipe fitters were going to work on a wellhead. They were supposed to prove zero energy, so like make sure there was no pressure or anything in that lines. They didn't do it, or whoever did it went and they isolated the wrong line is what happened. So when these pipe fitters went in and they went to go do their work, they're taking apart this valve. It was under pressure, it blew, hit the guy in the chest. And I think back of military aspect, and then when I got out of the military I did go to school to be a firefighter medic. If I skipped over that, I'm like, I can help this person. And you go, well, you can't, right? Like when you look back at it, you go, there's nothing that you could have done. You don't have resources, you don't have anything to help them, so you're watching it kind of happen. The medics finally come. They're not working on them, or they're not driving. Everyone's like, what's going on? I'm like, well, he's not stable. They can't drive and work on him at the same time. We're on the dirt roads, right? And then we see stars come in and I'm like, shit, this guy, he's not going to make it. And he didn't. And it's very unfortunate. And, he was one of those guys that's probably been at the job for 10 years, made a lot of friends. He was that go-to old school worker. Right? Didn't question anything, just went to work, got the job done. That was my transition into safety. Right? That was was the catalyst of going, like, we killed this guy. And they're like, well, Jackson, you had nothing to do with that. And I went, yeah, right. I meant like society as a whole.
Yeah.
Right. It's something you never want to deal with. Lots of people grieve differently. There's people that grief counselors came in, people were off work and for anyone that has to be through that, and luckily that wasn't my job to call anyone. I didn't have to, talk to the families for that, but the ripple effect that has on everyone is huge. And so it was there that I switched from like management style stuff is to try to get into safety. And, I had people go, look, we think you'd be good at this, right? Your background, you care, you've done everything, and people listen to you. And that was kind of the stepping stone. So I worked with oil and gas companies, heavy duty industrial construction companies, and it's kind of fixing the same thing over and over again. We have all of these things. We have processes, SOPs, safe work practices, safe job procedures, hazard assessments, policies, and no one reads them. Right? You have them.
Yeah.
And you go, well, okay, how can we connect that why? Hey, like how can we make it understandable to people? And how can we make them actually want to participate in this? And, it's always a fight, but it's like you have to connect with people to understand why we do these things. And if we can work on that, we can start making change. And that was kind of the thought process I had. So consulted for years. And then I really wanted to look at, okay, oil and gas is good. Yeah, they still hurt people and there's still all these incidents, but they're this big machine that has, they have their processes, they have their teams, they have all this stuff. How do we help the companies that are going to work for them, or how to start out? Because as my time as a consultant, you see a lot of people that want to make a lot of money and not do a lot of work. So I'd go to these small companies and they'd be like, oh yeah, I just spent $12,000 and I got a safety manual. I'm like, Jesus, or they're come in, it's like, here's 20 grand, let me come implement this for you. Or, how do we make people want to do this? Well, we need to make it accessible. So like I said, I've made myself unemployable, not in a bad way. It's just, like I'm strong-headed, I'm opinionated, but I care. And I've worked with some great companies that I know would take me back in a heartbeat, but it's like, I want to do my own thing. So it was, how do we help as many companies and as many people as we can? And that was kind of the birth of Goal Zero.
Fantastic. We're going to be taking a short break here, brother, but what an impetus and what a driver to get you there. I mean, watching somebody go is tough, man. And that's usually a catalyzer. It really tests you on one side or the other. It tests you personally, it tests your sense of self, and it tests you to look at what's going on around you and decide that it's not good enough. That is an absolutely exceptional thing that you just shared, Jax. Thank you so much. Hey, for our crew out there, we're just going to take a short break. We're going to pop back in right away and start going through some of the stuff that really got Jax kicking it. But what a heavy thing to have to do to really drive you to Jax. Thanks for sharing that, brother. And we'll be right back.